Hi, students. How are you? Hope you had a great weekend. This week I am going to send you a video. This is just going to be short, just a little review of what we did last week on something called conditionals. So you might not remember that name, but remember it was those type of sentences that had two parts, two clauses, and a condition is something that needs to happen in order for the other part of the sentence to be true, right? So it has the two parts. There's one part is the condition. It's called the condition. And then a lot of times there was a comma, remember? And the second part was called the result. So actually, we did only one of those types, and there's really four types of conditional sentences. So I found this chart that I thought that you might like on the internet, and this is the type that we did last week. We did what's called the first conditional. Remember, the first part of the sentence, the condition, we called it, was in simple present tense, remember? And the second part was in the future tense. So here's an example. If it rains, and you put comma, we will cancel our trip. All right, or I think we did some examples. If it rains, I will bring my umbrella. All right, so those kinds are talking about a possible thing that might happen in the future. So the second part of the sentence was always in future tense, and the part that was the condition was in present tense. So there's actually another conditional sentence that I didn't talk to you about that's called zero conditional, which is used to talk about things that are almost always true. They're generally true. Or we might say if something happens again and again, like a pattern that we see, you get the same result. Okay, so here's an example. If you stand out in the rain, you get wet, okay? So we know this is true. You're never going to stand out in the rain and stay dry. I don't think that happens, right? All right, so also here's their second example up here. Let's say you have some ice, right? If you heat ice, it melts. It always happens, right? So that's what they use zero conditional for. In that case, both of those clauses are in present tense. So those are the first two types of conditional sentences. All right, so the type that we really are going to focus in on our lesson Friday morning is going to be called second conditional. This one is a little bit different because both of the ones that we have just talked about are things that really happen. This next one is going to let you use your imagination a little bit. Things that probably won't happen, or maybe they're just impossible. Things like, if I could fly, okay? Well, I can't fly. Maybe I just wish that I could fly. All right, so here's their example. Because some things, they're not impossible, but they just probably aren't going to happen. That's their first example. If I won the lottery, I would travel a lot. Because, you know, in the United States, we have this lottery system where you can buy a lottery thing at the convenience store. I don't ever do that. I don't want to waste my money. I don't think it's a very good chance that I will win. But let's say that I bought a lottery ticket and I won. If I won the lottery, I would have a lot of money. What would I do? Maybe I would travel a lot because I like to travel. What would you do if you won the lottery? Would you give the money, send the money home to your family? Would you go visit your family? What would you do? So this is a situation that probably is not going to happen, Maybe, it's possible, but it is not likely. It is not a very good chance, right? All right, so this is used for hypothetical. That is a word that means it could happen. We are just thinking about possibilities, but it is not likely to happen. So they say that these are unreal or improbable situations for now or in the future. So the one clause is in the past simple form. The other one uses would plus a verb. Here's a second example that they gave. They use the word they in the subject. If they sold their house, they would be rich. Well, maybe they are not even thinking about selling their house, but they are just talking about someone else, and they say, well, if they sold their house, they would be rich. Okay? All right, and there is also going to be another one. I just want to show you all of it so you can see the whole thing. But we will be talking about the second conditional in our lesson. There is going to be one more after that, and that one is talking about if the person imagined a different past. Usually this is used to talk about maybe when you wished something else had happened. Maybe you are sorry that something didn't happen a certain way. All right, so here is an example. You could say, if you had studied, you would have passed the exam. So maybe you wish things had been different. You wish you had studied. If you had studied, you would have passed the exam. All right, so that uses past perfect in the one clause, and in the other clause, you have the word would and have plus the past participle. Here's their second example. If I hadn't, remember that means had not, if I hadn't been sick, I would have gone to your party. So we can't change the past, but we can talk about it. Maybe we are saying to someone, I really wanted to go to your party, but I was sick. If I hadn't been sick, if I had not been sick, I would have gone to your party. All right, so these are the 4 different types of conditional statements, ones that all of them have if, all of them have 2 clauses. All right, so in our lesson, we're going to review first conditional. We'll look at 0 a little bit, and then we're going to practice second conditional together. All right, so let's take a look at some of the second conditional. All right, so this is a chart about second conditional. Make myself smaller so I'm not in your way. All right, so remember we talked last time about having a condition and having an outcome, or something that happens when that condition happens. So here are their sentences. If I were rich, I wouldn't work anymore. So maybe that is true for that person. It isn't true for everyone. Now, you might notice that something is strange in this sentence, right? Normally, we do not say I and were together, do we? Normally, we say I was. But in this situation, using conditionals, lots of times they say were. It's just a little bit more formal language, and it is okay in this situation to say were. It's also fine to say was. If I was rich, I wouldn't work anymore. They use were. It's a little more normal the way that they say it when you're using conditionals. So if that sounds a little strange to your hearing in your normal use of English, it's fine if you say was. That's not incorrect, okay? But you will hear people say were probably more frequently. If I were rich, I wouldn't work anymore. So the condition was being rich. And the outcome, what might happen if that was true, would be not working. All right, so here is their explanation. I don't have a lot of money right now. So right now, I'm having to work, right? So it's unlikely that I'm going to become rich because I don't have a lot of money right now. Right now I need to work. But if I were rich, then I wouldn't work anymore. Actually, that is not true for me. I love to work. So I would still work because working with all of you is really a joy in my life. All right, so remember with this type of sentence, you can also turn it around. You can say it forwards or backwards. You can reverse those clauses. So if we reversed them, this is what it would look like. You could start with the outcome. So you could say, I wouldn't work anymore if I were rich. Notice that when they reverse it, when they have the outcome first, you don't need to put the comma there. All right, let's look at another example. Okay, let's look first. They have the condition is being young again. Well, I am not young. I don't think I can make myself young again, even if I really, really wish to be young again. Okay, I can't be young again. I can maybe act like I'm young, but I can't be young again. So the condition was being young again, and the outcome is living life in a different way. All right, so this person's sentence is, if my grandparents were young again, they would do things differently. All right, so their explanation says, it's talking about the grandparents, and it says they can't go back in time. So this is impossible, isn't it? Right? They can't do that. So it is just saying if they could do that, they would do things differently. So here they reverse those two clauses. They say, my grandparents would do things differently if they were young again. All right, they have a couple of other examples. If the children had a pool, they would swim every day. The children would swim every day if they had a pool. All right, this next one is really strange. If she grew an extra head, she would be twice as smart. Okay, so we all only have one head, right? So maybe you think, well, it'd be very nice if I had two heads. Then I would be two times as smart. Okay, maybe I would be twice as confused. I don't know. But the condition was growing another head and being twice as smart. I know I have heard many people say, if I could just have more hands, I could get twice as much done, right? So maybe we would make a sentence like that. Maybe some of you young, moms with young children wish that you had more hands to get more things done. So now they give us some tips. Remember they did this last time, some advice. So the first one is the advice that I told you before, that remember that be verb is the one where you use was or were or am. It's telling us here that the be verb is always going to be were here. So they say, if I were a dog, instead of saying if I was a dog. So if Juan were an astronaut, he would fly to the moon. So they are just saying that this is common to use were, even though we don't actually use those in other sentences. We would say was. But in this case, it's fine to use were. It's very common. So their next tip is that, the contractions where you have that apostrophe, it says would contract to apostrophe D, all right? And would not becomes wouldn't. So they have N apostrophe T. That means would not. Because sometimes these sentences have a not in them. They are negative. So here is an example. If the clerk were taller, she'd be able to reach the top shelf. Okay? Or another example, if my coworker inherited a lot of money, she probably wouldn't work here anymore. She would not work here anymore. All right, and then our last tip, could plus the base verb can be used in place of the past verb or would plus the base verb. So if I could ski, I would buy a season's pass at my local mountain. If he didn't have to babysit tonight, I could go to Marco's party. So we can say could instead of talking about it being would or wouldn't. All right, so those are just some of our tips. When we meet together, we'll go through some of these exercises like this, where you choose the correct word. So I'll leave this up on the screen if you want to practice just the first few of these after you watch the video to just get warmed up on that idea. We'll do some like this where you choose the right word. Remember we did some like this last week? We'll do some that are matching, where you match the second half. And we'll just do some where we just talk together about these. And I give you something and I ask you, what would you do if in this situation? All right, so this was just a short little video to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about on Friday morning. Remember, we're going to meet at 10 o'clock. I know this is a little more difficult for some of you because now lots of you have your kids home. They're not in school anymore. But if you can come, please join us for class at 10 o'clock on Friday. I hope I can see some of you then. Have a great week. See you later. Bye.